Greetings and welcome to the Bowling Green First United Methodist Church. We hope that you enjoy what you're about to see, and you can find us on the corner of Broadway and Church Streets at 11 o'clock on Sunday mornings. Or you can find us at bgmethodist.org and on Facebook at Bowling Green First United Methodist Church.
First thing which I'll do this morning as we start this off is just to take a deep breath and then let it out. We are in this period of time where we're after Easter, but we're before everything gets crazy in May. Some folks would already had a couple of my farmers that I drove this morning just kind of looked at me and said, "Yeah, it's not easy right now," because they're out in the fields. But for most of us, we're kind of in that lull of things where, yeah, we still got stuff going on, but it's a little bit calmer, maybe just a little bit quieter, even if only for just a short period of time. I looked at one of the Madison Acres over at Oak Grove this morning and said, "How many days of school you got left?" She's like 20 or something like 20, and looked over at Brianne, Gregory, and asked her if she was ready to be done with school yet, and she's like, "Oh yeah." We're kind of in that period of just kind of waiting before everything builds back up to its finish, but it's not a bad time to be in right now, to kind of be in that lull a little bit. So I think that means, what that really means is you have my permission to go out and do something fun or relaxing or not do anything this afternoon. So, except for you. But it is, we've got a little bit of that time. And we're kind of in this time of, we're not really sure what to do between Easter and Pentecost. There's about 50 days in this season where it's a kind of a celebration, and the disciples are really excited for what has happened and for the encouragement they have because Easter happened and Jesus rose from the dead. They found an empty tomb. They're all excited about that, and they're celebrating. But what do you do during this time of celebration? I knew some folks at one point in time, they could party for 50 days straight, but that would be a little bit hard to do, I think. So what do? We look back first at the story, where we left the story off, that Jesus was talking to his disciples last week. He said to them, "Therefore go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to obey everything that I have commanded you." So go and do this. He's giving them, telling them, this is what you are going to do. And this gives them a purpose for what they're going to be doing, and kind of a purpose for that end time of that celebration. Now, you all have heard probably many sermons preached on this passage. I've heard many sermons preached on this passage, and I've given just one or two of them on this passage. And the trouble is that we hear, "Go and make disciples." I run that through the filter in my head, and it says, "Go and do something." I'm not really clear on what that something is, but just go and do something. That's because too often we do this and we aren't told what does it look like to make disciples. What do we actually do to make that happen? What does this? How does this all work together? It's go and do something. That's what we hear. And the trouble is, we hear those words, we hear it say that, but then things kind of come up and get in the way. One, we don't have a plan for how to make that happen. We're going to kind of talk about that later. But more importantly, we get other things that get in the way of us being able to do that. There can be good things, it could be joys, it could be celebrations, it could be those fun, really good stories that we like to tell over and over and over again. Nothing wrong with those stories, but sometimes they can get in the way because we just like to tell those stories. Sometimes it can be other things. It can be bad things. It can be other things get in the way of us being able to do that because maybe we've had something hard that has happened, or something difficult, or something challenging that keeps us from being able to go and do something. Part of what we have to be able to do is to tell that story. But not just tell the story, but tell the story with the purpose of taking a step then beyond it. Because we can revel in stories. We're really good at reveling in stories and telling those stories, even the same ones that we've heard over and over and over again from our parents, that we could probably recite for them as soon as they say the first couple of words to it. We like to tell those stories. What becomes important is, what do we do after the story is over? Or do we just get sucked into the story? I had back when the fifth Harry Potter book came out. I went and I bought it on a Saturday night. I got it like at 5 o'clock. This is still a 20-minute drive home. I started reading it, and you know how you get caught up in a book and you can look down an hour, 2 hours, 5 hours, 8 hours later and realize, well, what happened to all that time in there? I may have done that with that one. At one point, about 2 o'clock in the morning, I said, I've only got 100 pages left. I can finish this. I finished it about 3:30 that morning, and then had to get up and preach 5 hours later. Sometimes we can get caught up in the stories. But sometimes we've got to know, well, what do we do after that? And not just get caught up in the story. How do we tell the stories with a purpose so that we can take a step beyond it? So we can use them to set us going forward and not to keep us tied up in one place. Because this is the challenge that we have. This was the challenge Jesus was facing because he had folks that were telling a story. The religious leaders were telling a story. They could tell that story because they told it all the time to remind themselves of where they came from, but they got stuck in it. They would tell that story and then they would go, and we can't change anything now where we are because if we do, then the whole story is going to fall apart. They were really worried about what would happen if they ever did anything after telling the story. Jesus comes along, tells the exact same story that they had been telling to everybody, and all of a sudden people are energized by it and they're ready to go and do something by it because he's telling them a story but giving them a purpose to go and do something past it. This is why when Jerusalem was flattened by the Romans in 70 AD, it was the Christians that expanded out to the rest of the world because they were ready for when the change happened. They were ready to go out because their story was setting them to go out and to do something. Whereas others had gotten caught in the story and couldn't go anywhere. So part of our challenge is that we need to be able to tell that story. And sometimes we can do that because we get confronted with something that we have to change immediately. But what works out better is when we have time to tell the story and figure out what that next step is going to be. And so that's kind of where this is going to start, is looking at being able to tell our part of the story so that we can go and do something. Well, we got to know what that is. And so I've got a few questions. I won't ask you to give me answers to them today, but to be thinking about how you would tell this story. And I didn't come up with these questions on my own. These are actually the questions that at our training thing we did in February, these are the questions that started this all off. So what is the good that you're doing in your church and community? Those are great stories to be able to tell, but sometimes we can get caught in those stories just as well. But we need to be able to tell them. You need to be able to tell the good ones. But on the other side of that, these next two questions I'm just going to kind of lump together, and that is the bad and the ugly to that. So you've got, what are the things that aren't so good? What are the things that are frustrating, that make you angry, that annoy you about your church or community, about the things that go on? Because those are as much a part of our story as other things are. It's the good, the bad, and the ugly. All of it gets wrapped up together and is a part of this story that we tell. But we have to be able to tell it. We have to be able to tell it, but then we have to have a purpose to be able to go beyond them, to be able to take that next step past them. So that we use them in the right way so we can be ready to change and to grow and to become more instead of getting stuck in one place. This is the kind of story we see as Moses' story begins to start. And so it was at the close of one chapter and it was starting another chapter in a much longer story that we see. And it starts out like this. It says, now a new king came to power in Egypt who didn't know Joseph. Remember who Joseph was, as he was the one who was sold into slavery by his brothers. He was the one who then in slavery ran afoul of the people who had some power. He got himself into more trouble, even though he was trying so hard not to. He was one who then, while in jail, figured out that he could interpret dreams. And so he did that and got a couple of other folks in trouble, but that then became one of his strengths because someone remembered that story that he told and said, here's a guy, I know a guy, who can do something. And he was the one that interpreted then Pharaoh's dream that said, there's going to be famine coming, but you're going to have time to prepare. and you need to prepare now. And so then, all of a sudden, he was brought up, he was elevated up, he was put in charge of making the preparations and getting ready. So when the famine, when the drought came, Egypt was ready for what was going to happen, because Joseph used the story that he knew to get them ready, to make them ready for the change that was coming. Now the trouble is, eventually Joseph and the Pharaoh at that time die and they pass away, and a new king comes to power that didn't know the story. And you know what happens when people don't know the story, right? It's just what it says here. They get afraid. The new king said to his people, the Israelite people are now larger in number and stronger than we are. Come on, let's be smart and deal with them. Otherwise, they will only grow more in number. And then the rest of our passage for this morning details what went on to enslave the Egyptian people. For 430 years, the Israelites were in Egypt, and for most of that time, they were in slavery to the Egyptians because the Egyptians were afraid. They didn't know the story. They didn't know what was going on. And so they were afraid, and they wanted to maintain things right where they were. And so they would tell their story to keep things in that same place so they didn't have to change. This is where Moses' story begins. In the middle of all of this is where Moses' story takes its start. Now we have to remember as we tell this story that there's two different ways you can tell this. The one is the very religious way that so often we tell this story, which is that we tell it. We tell this story in Sunday school. We tell this story in Vacation Bible School. Preachers are really good at telling Moses' story whenever we need a bit of flash and dash, and so we tell the story of the parting of the Red Seas because, hey, that's big and crazy and wild and exciting. Or in case we think we need to reprimand our church in some way, shape, or form, we tell the story of the Ten Commandments. So if you ever heard me start preaching on the Ten Commandments, be worried. Don't probably be worried because, But that's why we do that. We make the story very religious. But there is more to this story than that. It's not just a religious story. It is a story about a people and a place and a time and a context and a society. And there are economic things going on and cultural things going on and all of these other pieces there that help to tell that story. And we see the way that some folks, when they can tell that story, it gives them hope and promise for the future and helps them take that next step forward. We see this in our own nation's history as, in our time of slavery in the African American tradition, this was the story that they told because they knew what it was like to be slaves. They were living that story. They saw themselves in that story, not just on the religious part of it, but the cultural and the society, the economics of it. They saw themselves as a part of that story, and they knew what that meant, and it gave them hope that they could come out of it, and we look and saw what happened. It scared the folks who were in charge. When all of those slaves started to hear this story and accept and begin to have faith in God and especially in Jesus, and they were telling this story, it made the leaders afraid because they were taking the story that was giving them hope to take a step forward, to take a step out of where they were, where the others, they wanted to keep things right here. But things were changing, and they were ready for it because they knew the story. They could tell the story. And they knew what they were going to do with it afterwards because they weren't just going to stay in one place. That's our goal as we tell the story over the next couple of weeks. We're going to be telling this story of Moses. And we're going to be using that so that we can be ready to take our own step forward. It's going to kind of be a starting point for us for what we're going to do going into the summer and especially starting this fall. Because one of the things that we need most is we need that time to be able to tell maybe this story, maybe a couple of other stories, where we need to be able to tell our stories so that we can then know how do we take another step out of this. And so starting this fall, we're going to do something different. We're working on putting the final touches on this, and we're going to run it by some other folks, but we're going to start small groups sometime this fall, probably early September. And the purpose behind them is going to be to do this, to help us grow in our faith, to build community, and to invite others. Because the easiest way to bring someone in and share your faith with them is if you already share stories with them. It's a whole lot easier to share a story with someone if they can tell part of it themselves. But this gives us the chance to bring others into that also. It gives us a chance to tell our stories in a place where we can tell the good, the bad, and the ugly. So we can tell those things, but then so that we can figure out and we can then figure out what to do so we can do something. That something Jesus says is to go and make disciples of Jesus Christ, or for the computer today, apparently. But it is what we are called to do, to go and make disciples. To know how to do that, though, we've got to know the story that we're telling. And so that's what we're going to begin to do as we look at Moses' story. He's going to give us kind of the blueprint for how we're going to do that. We're going to figure out the things, the pieces that we need so that we can do this work. But I invite you to, this coming week and in the weeks that are coming, to figure out your story, the good, the bad, the ugly of it, to figure out your story, think about your story, maybe even begin telling your story in different ways so that we can be ready to go and to do something, to make disciples, and to share that hope and that promise that God gives us, not just in Exodus, but runs all the way from Genesis to Revelation. Then let us do that in Christ's name. Amen.